I'd like to back up and tell you one story.
Sure.
I bought a DC-3, and I had connections down to Colombia to haul marijuana, and that hauled three tons, 1,000 miles, and land on a 1,700-foot strip. A wonderful, wonderful airplane there, that is.
What'd you pay for that, by the way, that plane? If you can put it up, John.
$65,000.
You paid $65,000 for that plane?
Yes.
Wow.
And it's worth about $500,000 now. But anyway, I was down there, and I got shot down, shot plumb out of the sky by the Colombian jets, two jets. And that was during the World Series baseball game in 1981. And I got out of that plane and was 11 days in the jungle. And the other couple of guys that was in the plane, they went down the road, and they spent several years in Bogota prison. And I went through the jungle and rode dugouts and whatever I could do and swim across rivers. And I was 11 days, and that's when I finally came to a place I could, donde está avión, square airplanes. And the Indians would say, Loma Linda, Loma Linda. And finally, when I got to Loma Linda, it was beautiful. It looked like Hawaii in World War II, airplanes sitting out there. And I went up and, hello, how did you get here, you know? And you don't know what this place is? This is Loma Linda, headquarters for Missionary Aviation Fellowship for the Amazon. And they flew me out. Isn't that wonderful?
Wow. And by the way, for you, we have younger listeners. This is not the same Amazon, like the Amazon company. You're talking about like Amazon.
The Amazon jungle.
We have to clarify it nowadays because some people are thinking Amazon was founded in the 80s. It's not, folks. It's later on. So that happens, and then what happens at that moment? How are you getting connected with these guys?
A guy came up and wanted me to know if I would unload a ship with marijuana and wanted me to give him $100,000 or something and to buy the fuel to come up in case I didn't there so they could go back. And I thought that was a pretty good deal, but it was just a ripoff. So I went down to see him, and he didn't have the money, of course, so he took me to see a man named Fernando Correo in Medellin, Colombia, and he was up on the top floor, and he looked like Winston Churchill, or was a kind of like, he could speak a lot of language, probably a genius from no telling, but he was drunk, and he stayed drunk. So that's how, and he said he paid $5,000 a kilo to anybody to transport his cocaine, but you see Marta, his wife, and so I did, and so in sashayed a woman from Bolivia, Sonia de Attila, and high cheekbones and rabbit boots and rabbit fur coat, and she was kissing him on all cheeks and said she was going to Miami to buy an airplane. And so he said, you have an airplane, don't you, Roger, for sale? So the lawyer there did. So I said, yes. He said, what kind? I said, a Queen Air. Well, she perked right up, Queen Air. So she said the price, and he kept bumping his hand up like that. So I made a deal to sell her the Queen Air, and I had it brought down. And then when it came to Panama, and she said, well, you have to go to Santa Cruz, Bolivia to get the money. Wow, so her entourage and all got in it. We went to Santa Cruz, and the police met her with the flags flying on the old limousines, and we went outside of Santa Cruz and to underneath the water tank. And there was like a house made of marble, square, like a mausoleum. And there was a fence around it, and the people were all outside the fence, and they were crying. And she, what's the matter with you fools? And your lion is in there eating the baby. She had a mountain lion, and she opened the door and run in there, and there was Kitty, about a 200-pound mountain lion, eating a baby on the floor. It almost, it was just gross.
What do you mean eating a baby?
The maid left the baby on the floor, and this mountain lion that she's pet in her house is eating it.
What?
Yes. That's the most gruesome thing, horrible thing I've ever seen in my life. It was just terrible. I mean, she finally took it away, but the baby was eaten.
Done.
Well, some head and some diapers and some legs left there.
This
Dude,
was her
that
pet
story
mountain
is
lion?
just like,
Yeah.
So
What the hell's going on
holy
here?
well,
So
that
I got
story
my,
just took a total turn.
seriously,
I don't know where that
I'm in
was
a
going.
complete different place right now.
So, and it was her baby and her
No,
mountain
not-
lion.
no.
More interested
it's-
about this mountain lion now than Pablo Escobar.
Nah, I don't know.
yeah, it was.
And you saw this.
right there when she pushed him away in the lion with all muddy mouth, and she grabs him around the neck and gets him out of there. And, so
Roger, I know we're going to get into Pablo Escobar. I know we're going to get into some of those juicier stories. At any point, you're already in a Mexican jail. You're seeing babies getting eaten. You're getting your
been shot.
You've been shot at. You're missing a foot almost. At any point, you're saying, babe, like, Is your wife not saying, honey, what are you doing? Like, just like live our life in California, or is the money too sweet to pass up?
Did you know, looking at that time, it didn't even feel dangerous, even if those things happened.
How's that possible?
I don't know, but it just didn't.
What? You're seeing people lose their lives. You're almost losing your life, and it still didn't feel dangerous?
It really didn't. I mean, it's just like flying an airplane and you land on a sand bed, or it's like a bush pilot, and it was fun. And it was great. I mean, go down and stay in the nicest hotels in Mexico and go fishing and fly a load back. It was just great.
How much shit did you see growing up as a kid? Like, did you live a rough life? Like, did you live a
Not
life
at
where you
all.
saw?
I lived in a mother and father and grandma. I lived in the
That's
grandma
what it
around
feels
the house.
like. Yeah, it feels like you were raised with right values.
I did. Yes, of course I did.
And then, so as an outlaw yourself, is it the thrill? Is it the excitement? Is it money? Is it let me get a little bit more? Is it what keeps you coming back?
I don't know. It was just like I wasn't afraid of it, and it was a lot of money. Like now, I'm making $100,000 every time I want to fly an airplane down for a little buzz and go fishing and come back.
That was it.
Yeah.
So okay, so if you want to continue with the story, so at what point do you meet Ochoa or Pablo?
Okay, these guys come up after, I think it was after the DC-3 was shot down. And now I'm all right. I can't go to Colombia, and I've had some trouble in Mexico, too. There's things that I've skipped. So I'm kind of out of places to go. We went to Pakistan, did a load out of there, and then went to Thailand, did a load out of there, big 20-ton loads. Unloaded in British Columbia and flew it down in float planes to Washington State. I did.
What did the Thailand deal make you, the 20 tons?
I don't know, a couple of $1 million, I reckon, you know.
Couple $1 million.
Yeah, and I bought a Cessna 206, was a beautiful plane, and flew it down.
How did they find you? Because this is pre anything. So how are people finding you? Through what contest? Not like you're on Yellow Page. It's not like you have an Instagram that can DM me. How are people finding you?
Well, this guy, the Thailand deal was later on with a guy named Howard Marks that wrote the book Mr. Nice. You've heard of him? Yeah, he hooked me up. And
Got it.
Did several times.
So because obviously back in the days in the military that was normal. So I'm thinking if the connection was any kind of a military.
No,
things like
nothing
this
like
used to
that,
happen with some of the guys that were in the military back in the days. Military bases
Yeah.
were a great place to smuggle drugs.
Right.
Back in the days.
Oh, he had some people that were doing it, and we had some people to do it. But then, okay, so a guy came up and wanted me to unload the ship, and then he stole the money, and so I'm going after it. So he introduces me to Fernando Cordereo, and so then his wife says we were having his birthday party, and so it was over on the Pacific coast, and this is another story. He says so. I flew over there in a plane with a commercial plane, landed on the Pacific Ocean. It was like in the jungle. I mean, it looked like you was as far away from civilization you could get between Panama and Ecuador. And they landed, it must have been 300 people there. And that's when they was deciding, I think it was, or I know it was the beginning of the Medellin cartel. They had actresses and actors and stand-up comedians and judges and police chiefs from all over. And everybody had their little bag of cocaine showing it, this and the other. And the party raged for about 2 days, and then the nice helicopters went to flying away in the planes and left us poor folks there. So it was Sunday, and a good portion of it gone, and I had taken some barbecue and went around the log cabin and was laying there in the hammock reading MMK's The Far Pavilion, and pow, pow, and blood spattered on the book that I'm reading. And I rolled out of that hammock and kept rolling until I felt safe to look up. And I looked up, and there was a young black man, handsome man, looked like he's about 22 or 25, and he was tearing the pistol out of a white Colombian man's hand, and he put it right between his head and went click, 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 click. There was no more bullets in it. And there was a dog there, a white bulldog with a black patch over his eye, and he was turning cartwheels, and the blood was flying. And I looked, and on the young man he had been shot in the leg, and he was bleeding bad. And so he hobbled backwards, and I said, "Listen," I told him in Spanish, I'm a doctor, I was lying, but I could have stopped it because with this fireman training, and so he pointed that gun at me, and I didn't want that click, click, click in my face, and he hobbled on back. And I said, please, man, I'm a doctor. I can help you. And he went on back down there and died. An old crone out came out screaming, y'all people are going to get in trouble. And that night, the generator went out, and it was full of water and stuff when we went out there, and we could hear those people la, 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 under the trees down there, and we thought we was going to get killed. I mean, sure enough, and the next day the place was, the runway was covered in cans and trees and stuff, so the people couldn't land, and we stood up all night long to a little rags and oil cans so we could have a little bit of light. So,
crazy story. But how did you meet Pablo and
so
Ochoa?
now then, I meet somebody there,
Yeah.
and he wants me to fly cocaine.
Okay.
So his name was Jaime Ordonez, and he had a ton of cocaine confiscated from him in Medellin, and he had killed 16 judges, is what I heard. So I flew down, and he was supposed to put 300 kilos, and I believe there's 165 in there, and I gave it to a guy named Bill Barbosa, and somebody shot him in the stomach. He was in the hospital 2 or 3 months here in Miami, and I thought, I ain't want to fool with those people anymore. So I told my friend Mario, the one that introduced me to him, and he says, I got somebody to introduce you to. I've got somebody you need to meet. Come down. So I came down, and we went to Envigada, is a village just out of Medellin, and we pulled up into like a little estate, like an old house with hitching rails in front and little stones all over, and there must have been 30 or 40 men out there waiting to talk to the patrons. And so we was ushered right in, and there was a drop-dead gorgeous woman in there. I mean, she wanted to know if we wanted a cup of coffee or tea, so we had our coffee, and then we were introduced to Jorge Ochoa. Mm-hmm. And he was sitting at a big desk, and he was so nice. He spoke some English, and he had 12 telephones, all of them with different colors. And he tell us this is New York, and this is Washington, and that in Seattle. He said, when it rings, I know where they're talking from. So I got salesmen in that part and other, and he told me I wanted to know what kind of airplanes I had and what kind of experience I had crossing the border. And I told him, and he said, well, we pay $5,000 a kilo for you to bring it up, and we'll put it on, and our people will accept it up there. So he said, let me get my partner. So he was gone a minute, and he came back in with Pablo Escobar. And Pablo Escobar was a nice-looking man, and was friendly and had a nice attitude toward him, shook hands, asked me the same question that Jorge had asked me, and he seemed pleased with it. And so that was how I met him. So I started flying, and they put 300 kilos on the first time, and then I said it'll hold a lot more, but they wouldn't put it on for me. So after I don't know how many loads, I guess 5 loads or something, I got above the fog, and I couldn't get down, and I had to land at New Orleans International Airport and bounce down that thing in the fog and sit there all night with 300 kilos in there. So the next morning the sun's come up, and I'm like, ouch. And I took off and went over where I was supposed to do and got down, and I thought I'm not going to ever do that again. I had $7 million at the time, and I said, I'm through. So I told Lito, the man that I give it to, I said, listen, man, I almost got killed. I'm not going to do it again. Oh, Roger, please, don't you know anybody? So that's when I hired Barry Seal.
Got it.
And then I hired another fellow out in California. And so I had 2 airlines going, and I had about 7 of those Panther conversions. And I had 2 people buying cars, putting hydraulic jacks on them and new hoses and new tires. And it was just like bang, 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 bang.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.